Welcome. This is an IXL support video. We're going to be looking at the second assignment in cluster Y, the one that's called Find the Slope from 2 points. As this assignment loads up, I'm going to make the whiteboard a little larger for a second to look at some of our notes. This assignment focuses on slope, and hopefully by now you're familiar with this green definition on my whiteboard, that slope really represents the rate of change for our linear relationships. And in blue, we've written another way to understand that. Slope, if it's the rate of change, it really tells us how much y changes by, the y variable, each time the x is going to increase by 1 unit. Earlier we worked on a graph, and when we have graphs, it's helpful to think of rise over run to be able to measure that rate of change. But sometimes, like this second IXL assignment, they're just going to give you 2 data points from the graph or 2 solutions to the linear equation, and they're going to ask you to measure the slope or the rate of change between those 2 data points. And there it's helpful to focus on this brown definition, which tells us we can measure slope. This little triangle here means how much something changes by. It's called delta in science or math. So delta y says how much did y change by, divided by how much did x change by. And if you do that, that'll get you to your rate of change. So let's take a look at a few examples here. We're going to use the whiteboard throughout. And the first example we have, it says find the slope of the line that passes through 2 points. The first point they list here is 10 and 2. And then they also list the second point it passes through 8 and 1. These are ordered pairs. I'm going to write both of these ordered pairs onto my whiteboard. 10 and 2 is the first point. The second data point that this line passes through is 8 and 1. And it is important to understand when I have ordered pairs, the x value is listed first, and then the y value. That's our convention. So if slope measures rate of change, and we need in our numerator the y change, and the denominator, the bottom of the fraction, is going to be the x change, I'm going to first measure the y change, since that's what goes in the numerator. I see my y value started out at 2, and then it traveled to 1. It actually decreased in value. To get from positive 2 to positive 1, we've gone down. Specifically, we've gone down by 1 unit. And during that time, while the y value lost 1 unit, the x value went from 10 to 8. That was also decreasing. And in this case, the x value just decreased by 2 units. So in this relationship, if 10 and 2 was our starting point and 8 and 1 was the next point our line went through, the y has lost 1 unit, and the x has lost 2 units. So our slope is going to be -1 over -2. I notice IXL, as always, asks me to simplify my answer. And part of simplifying an answer, if I have a negative divided by a negative, that's going to simplify to be a positive. So I'm going to write my slope, my answer, is 1/2. Now 1/2 just says y will gain 1 as x gains 2, or there we saw y lost 1, so x lost 2. So we're going to run through a few more examples, but this IXL assignment, like many of them, follows the same process. So once you understand here, I need to measure slope between 2 points by measuring y change divided by x change. Hopefully it becomes straightforward. I think the best thing to do is write those data points down on your paper and stack them above each other. So 6 and 7 is my first point, and then it also travels through the point 2 and 6 for the second data point. This tells me that the y value, which is always listed second, right? The y value started out at 7, and it traveled down to 6, so the y value has lost 1 unit. And during that time that the y value lost 1 unit, the x value traveled from 6 to 2, so that also decreased, a negative. It decreased by 4 units to go from 6 down to 2. So here for my slope, my y change was -1, my x change was -4. A negative divided by a negative is going to give me a positive, so this gives me 1 over 4. Okay, we're going to run through a few more examples, try to get this up to 50 or 60, but we're going to pick up the speed a little bit just to hopefully find a couple tougher ones. If you have questions, definitely use the IXL explanations. We're going to start moving a little more quickly here, like I noted. So the first point we go through now, we see for this problem, and I'll highlight it, it starts at 1 and 6, that's our first data point, and then it also travels through 4 and 7. So the y value goes from 6 to 7, it increased value, it gained 1 unit, and the x value travels from 1 to 4, that's going up by 3 units. So that gives me a slope here of 1 over 3. Alright, in order to find a few ones that are a little bit more difficult, I'm going to plug in a few answers pretty quickly here and just talk about them. I see the y value goes from 10 to 1. So to get from 10 to 1, it lost 9 units. And the x value goes from 10 to 2. To get from 10 to 2, it lost 8 units. I'm going to go ahead and simplify that slope ratio. A negative divided by a negative gives me a positive. So the slope would be 9 over 8. I'm going to just plug in an answer here, down 4 and down. And hopefully, I wish there were any quicker way to just find a few ones. Hopefully they provide some ones that are a little tougher after we get past there. So here it goes from 8 to 9 on y, so y just gained 1. And the x value travels from 9 to 7, so it lost 2 units. And simplest form is to really put that negative sign out front, negative 1/2. Bear with me, we're going to just plug in a few answers. I'm trying to see if they have any ones where they give you negative points where it would be a little more tougher, just to show at the very end of this video a couple of the tougher ones. But they may not. Alright, so it does look to me, we're up to 75 now for the SMART score. It looks like they leave you with nothing but positives, at least up to 75. So I'm going to kind of cut the video off there with those examples. If you run into any tough ones on IXL towards the end and the explanations don't make sense, as always, please feel free to send me an email and I'm happy to jump on. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it was helpful.